Hey everybody, how you doing tonight? Welcome, welcome, welcome. So sorry for the slight delay, but here we are. I am in my lovely Brooklyn apartment and I am ready to have a great conversation with all of you. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Let's do this.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. So glad to be here with all of you. I am so glad to be here. We got a number of things to talk about tonight. The way we generally do things is I give my opening remarks. I just tell you what's on my mind. Then after that, I then do a roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then after that, I answer your super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if there's something you'd like me to answer in the second half of our show, by all means, go ahead and do so. So we got 2 super chats already. Lisa sent me a super sticker, and I appreciate it. Gleb asked me a question, which I'm going to type down. So there you go. There you go. Right. So there you go. There you go, folks. It's going to be an interesting few months. This election cycle is already heating up. The big news today, Donald Trump has been indicted. I don't know if you heard, but Donald Trump has been indicted. Not at the state level, here in New York, but on the federal level. They have indicted Donald Trump in relation to having classified documents at his house after he left office. They have indicted him. So Donald Trump now not only is facing state charges in New York, falsifying business records, he's now facing federal charges in the District of Florida in Miami, the federal district court in Miami. Wow. I hate to be right. I really hate to be right, but it looks to me like they are doing everything they can to make sure that Donald Trump can't run. Now, it looks to me like Donald Trump, because he would win, according to every poll that has come out. If he were to run again today, he would win. If the election were held today and he was the candidate, he would win. I think they're doing everything they can to make sure he is not the candidate of the Republicans. Now, that said, there is no law that says one cannot run for president if one is indicted or even convicted. People have run for president from jail before, and that has happened. So I feel like this is a situation where they are going to try and leverage pressure on Donald Trump. Right? It's like the charges could be lifted in exchange for him not running. I feel like that's the situation. They want to get Donald Trump into a situation where he's forced to back out of the race in order to get the criminal charges to stop. That's what it looks like to me. And this fits a pattern of the Biden administration weaponizing the judiciary. And honestly, it's putting Donald Trump back into the center of attention, and it is making Donald Trump more popular. It's playing into the idea that the establishment is against him. So it very well may embolden Donald Trump to run in the upcoming election. It may embolden his supporters. It's obvious, as Jenny Lynn is saying, it's obvious lawfare what they are doing to Donald Trump. And that, in the end, may ultimately benefit him. But it looks like, to some degree or other, the game plan for the 2024 elections is that the Democrats will have no primary. They will not have any primary debates. Mainstream media will just ignore all the other Democrat candidates, and they'll be ignored. Cornel West and his People's Party campaign is going to be ignored. RFK, every time they mention him, they just say vaccine conspiracy, and they treat him like he's a fringe candidate. Biden will get the automatic nomination of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump will somehow be blocked from being the Republican candidate. They'll pick some boring milquetoast Republican that no one likes, like Ron DeSantis, and Biden will win the election by default. And it is going to look an awful lot like a staged election. It's going to look an awful lot like a fake election. I mean, that's what it's going to look like to the public. And that is going to be very, very bad. Very, very, very bad for morale. Now, I hope that they are thinking of something else for their sake, because many people are going to look at this and be like, this is a joke. If this is how they end up doing it, if it follows this plan of Trump not being allowed to run, the Democrats not having a primary, Donald Trump winning Biden winning by default, if they follow that plan, the morale of the U.S. public is going to sink. And, And I mean, the morale of the U.S. public is going to sink. It's just going to absolutely sink. So I, however, think that there is a section of the U.S. ruling class, and I have maintained this for a long time. There is a section of the U.S. ruling class that would like to do that. Not because they want Biden to be president again, but because they know that re-electing Joe Biden in 2024 is the only way that we will ever see a Kamala Harris presidency. The only way Kamala Harris can ever become president of the United States, the only possible way this fragile, psychologically damaged, deranged, basket case, sadistic narcissist, Kamala Harris, the only way she can ever become president of the United States is if Joe Biden gets reelected and then retires midterm, or, God forbid, passes away from old age or whatever midterm. That is the only way Kamala Harris could ever become president of the United States. She is less likable than Biden is. She has lower approval ratings than Joe Biden does. She is wildly unpopular. People don't even want to work for her, let alone vote for her, right? Even people who work for her can't stand her, right? So I think it's very, very, very likely that, let me rephrase that. I got to write this super chat down. I think that there is a faction of our ruling class that the only way they will ever get any chance of getting what they want, which is a Kamala Harris presidency, the only way they can ever get that is by re-electing Biden in 2024. And so they are determined to make it happen. I wrote an entire book about Kamala Harris, and at the time I wrote it, somebody, there was a couple comments people laughed about. Oh, Caleb is making it out like Kamala Harris is such an important figure, but she's been such a lousy vice president. He was wrong about that. I don't think I am. I don't think I am. I think I was right in everything that I said, but I think regardless of how ineffective she has proven to be as a politician, they are still determined. Look how hard they're trying to sell Kamala Harris to us on The View. They're still, right? It's about to be the 2024 reelection time. She's been a miserable vice president. She has been a miserable, unpopular, ineffective vice president, and they are still trying to market her to us because they've invested so much in her. In my book on Kamala Harris and the Future of America, which is a book that honestly, of all the books I've written, right? I mean, it is the one that I did probably the most research for, right? And it got good reviews. Everyone who's read it liked it. But my BreadTube book sold way more than it. I mean, it didn't get as many sales as my other books because it's kind of an obscure topic. But some people, the daily Morning Star in the UK, they read it and they got a lot out of it. They ran a review of it. The Marxist, what are they called? The Marxist, what is it? The Marxist Center of Marxist Education in Oakland. They had me come and speak about it. The Center for Marxist Education in Boston had me speak about it. In random newspapers I had never heard of in India ran reviews of my book on Kamala Harris. I was shocked. They just came up in my Google alerts. Because I explained why Tulsi Gabbard used her limited time on the debate stage to go after Kamala Harris. I explained who has invested, how basically Kamala Harris is a product of the forces that brought us the Hillary Clinton State Department. And I go into detail showing that about how basically they wanted Hillary Clinton to run again in 2020, but they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't allow, Hillary Clinton to run again because she's so unpopular. And so as a result of that, they ultimately ended up going with Kamala Harris. Now Kamala Harris, her childhood was spent in the CIA cultivated wing of activism in the United States. Her father is a Marxist economist who lives in Jamaica, who she's estranged from, who denounced her campaign as a travesty of identity politics. She hates and loathes her father, who she's estranged from. She was a vicious prosecutor, going after black men as a prosecutor, right? I mean, just destroyed thousands of people's lives, tried to execute an innocent man. There was an innocent man on death row, and she tried to block DNA evidence so he could get the death penalty, which is just absolutely ruthless. And Kamala Harris is a vicious, cruel, sadistic person who takes pleasure in destroying people's lives and has extreme amounts of trauma, fixates on fantasies of revenge, has a huge ego, cannot handle any criticism, cannot handle any prep. She never will prep now, we hear, for interviews. I mean, Kamala Harris is a dangerous, dangerous basket case. A dangerous basket case who has been primed by the Israel lobby, by the neocon wing of the establishment. They know that she will start a war. She will start a war in order to prove how strong she is, in order to prove to the world that little girl was me. I mean, it is really dangerous. Go and read my book. It's not very long, 120 pages. It's not a huge manifesto. Go and read my book on Kamala Harris, and you will learn just how dangerous Kamala Harris is. And there's a reason that Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris are like arch enemies, because they represent two rival wings of the ruling class. Kamala Harris has been primed by the Hillary Clinton State Department. And she's been primed by the Hillary Clinton State Department. And the regime change lobby, the regime change apparatus. That's who primed Kamala Harris. And it's the Hillary Clinton State Department folks that primed Kamala Harris, that picked her out. They want another Arab Spring. They want more chaos around the world. However, and this is very interesting to me, Tulsi Gabbard represents a section of the U.S. military that is opposed to regime change wars. Tulsi Gabbard represents a layer of the U.S., Pentagon, the U.S. military brass that just does not think that wars and regime change around the world is having the payout that they want, that wants to fight Al-Qaeda and wants to fight Islamic terrorism rather than fighting Russia and China, that wants to negotiate with North Korea and is really worried about escalating to World War III against Russia and China because they realize that they won't win. And these are two different wings of the American deep state that have their own interests and their own reasons. One is the intelligence regime change apparatus, which is embedded with Silicon Valley. You got Jared Andrew Cohen, who was the liaison between Google Alphabet and Twitter and the U.S. State Department for Hillary Clinton during the Hillary Clinton years, the first term of Obama. You've got Anne Marie Slaughter, who's just a sociopath. Anne Marie Slaughter wrote an essay about how we need an open international system, and the main danger is populism. Go check out Anne Marie Slaughter, one of the big thinkers of the Hillary Clinton State Department. It's that color revolution apparatus. That's who brought us Kamala Harris, because they know how to push her buttons, and they know she's not well. It's that California wing of the CIA, Stanford Research Institute, Stanford University. That's where Marilyn Ferguson, who wrote The Aquarian Conspiracy, all about the need for a global uprising to uproot and destroy things involving hallucinogenic drugs and all of this, right? That's the liberal CIA based in California, the liberal California CIA that brought us Project MK Ultra, Operation Midnight Climax. Those folks are who brought us Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, the folks who brought us Tulsi Gabbard are Michael Flynn, the general who thought maybe we should team up with Russia to fight Al-Qaeda and we shouldn't be arming Al-Qaeda in Syria. The folks who brought us Tulsi Gabbard are McChrystal, the general, who's saying, look, we don't gain anything from sending weapons to Ukraine. Right now, we don't gain anything from it. The folks who brought us Tulsi Gabbard are the folks who very much propelled Donald Trump to go and have his meeting with Kim Jong-un. And these are rival wings of the deep state. And no, Tulsi Gabbard's not a communist. Tulsi Gabbard's not a socialist. She's a U.S. military person, but she's also religious. She's a very dedicated and loyal follower of a Hindu sect. One of the breakaways from the Hare Krishna movement. She has dedicated her life to that. Her spouses, she's been married. This is her second marriage. Her spouses are both members of that group. Her father was a very high-ranking member of that group. She's a very devoutly religious and illiberal woman who has served in the military and served in politics. Served in politics and is basically aligned with one faction of the U.S. apparatus that does not want to escalate with Russia and China and is really worried about the insanity that the regime change color revolution apparatus might be promoting. Now, I got to tell you all this. Again, I don't know, right? I have no way of verifying this. No way at all of verifying this. Okay, so I could be completely wrong about this. This is just a rumor I have been told by somebody who may or may not know. Okay, I'm not guaranteeing this. I'm not hanging my hat on this. This is not the hill I want to die on. But I don't know if you folks have noticed. I believe the Donald Trump campaign said that Donald Trump has already picked his running mate. And that it's going to be a big surprise when he names his running mate. Well, I'm telling you that a source that I don't completely trust, okay, I'm not hanging my hat on this. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? Now I've been right about a lot of things over the last few years. I was right about Kamala Harris. I've been right about a lot of things, but a source that may not know what they are talking about has indicated to me that they seem to believe that Donald Trump picked Tulsi Gabbard as his running mate. Now, I am not 100% confirming that, right? Again, I don't know. I have no way of verifying this or confirming this. But that is the rumor that has made its way to these ears. Okay? And I'm not hanging my hat on that. I'm not saying that's 100% going to happen. But that is the rumor that has trickled back to me. That Tulsi Gabbard quit the Democratic Party. Tulsi Gabbard started going on Fox News and Tucker Carlson's show in order to cement her relationship with conservatives. And that Donald Trump has picked Tulsi Gabbard to be his running mate and that he's going to announce that at some point. Now, I have no way, like I said, of confirming that that is true, but that is the rumor that has trickled back to me. And if that is true, wow. I mean, wow, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. Now, I cannot confirm that that is the case, right? It's just the rumor that has trickled back to me, and I hope it's true. The idea that Tulsi Gabbard could be vice president would be amazing, right? I mean, it's a shame she's not in Congress anymore. She's an anti-imperialist. She is wildly popular with the Fox News audience. She's wildly popular with the anti-regime change crowd. That's the only way I'll ever vote for Trump. And I hope that is the case. Now we will find out. We will obviously know. They don't usually name the running mate until like right before the conventions. But apparently it is Donald Trump has said he's already picked his running mate, and that it's going to surprise all of us. And the fact that Tulsi Gabbard is just on Fox News right now, she's not running for re-election in Hawaii. She's not doing anything back in politics. The fact that she has quit the Democratic Party, but she's not become a Republican, but she's been kind of cementing herself, going on Fox News all the time, cementing her relationship. I think there's a very good chance that Tulsi Gabbard will be Donald Trump's running mate. That Donald Trump, he realizes that Tulsi Gabbard could bring people to vote for him who wouldn't otherwise vote for him, kind of like what John McCarthy just said in his super chat. That is the rumor that I'm hearing. Now, this person could be wrong. This could be bad information that I have. But if that's the case, that explains why it's not just about January 6th. It's not just about Trump derangement syndrome. They really don't want Donald Trump to run. If Donald Trump is actually considering Tulsi Gabbard as his running mate, that would be huge, right? And that's wild. And I got to tell you, the Kamala Harris, Tulsi Gabbard vice presidential debate would be the greatest moment in American television. If there's anybody who would just head stomp Kamala Harris, I mean, just pound her head into the pavement, figuratively, it would be Tulsi Gabbard. That debate has to happen, right? I mean, if we want to see Kamala Harris get epically destroyed, we have to see that debate happen, right? So, I mean, and I think the White House knows this, right? That the person who knocked Kamala Harris out of the running for the presidency of the United States, right? Just destroyed her in the Democrat primary because she knows who she represents. Kamala Harris represents that military faction that doesn't want World War III, right? That's who she represents. And they have invested a lot in her, and they've kind of entered an alliance with the Trump people, even though they're not where they're at. They're critical of Trump in some way, and that they realize that 2024 for the powers that be won't so much be about reelecting Biden, but positioning Kamala Harris for the presidency and getting Kamala Harris in a position where she could actually be president. I think, to be honest with you, I really do believe that there is a feeling that they need to get Tulsi Gabbard to debate Kamala Harris in the vice presidency. They need Tulsi Gabbard on the ticket to defeat Donald Trump, or to defeat the Democrats. I said, I bet the Dems won't impeach him anymore if he does that. So, yeah, there you go. Because who would be president if they removed him? I'm just telling you, that is the rumor that I'm hearing. Now, I could be wrong. But the vice presidential candidate that Donald Trump picks, he's indicated is not a conventional politician, right? Now, some people are saying maybe it's Tucker Carlson, right? Maybe that's why Tucker Carlson left Fox News. I don't think it's Tucker Carlson, though. I don't think Tucker wants to be a candidate. I think it's going to be Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard's a politician. Tucker is not. Tucker is an entertainer. He's a TV host. I think Tulsi Gabbard will be the vice presidential candidate of Donald Trump. And that explains how wild the race is going to be. So if you haven't read my book on Kamala Harris, go and read my book on Kamala Harris, right? Catch up, right? Because everything, even though people, after she took office, people were like, oh, you were totally wrong, Caleb. You were totally wrong. No, I was not totally wrong. I was not totally wrong. In fact, I was right about how awful she is, but the fact that they're trying to sell her and the fact that Tulsi Gabbard is still in the picture, I'm telling you, you got to go read my book on Kamala Harris. You've got to go and read it. So those are a few of the things I wanted you all to think about tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. I can't be on here too late tonight, unfortunately. This is going to be a shorter stream because of the fact that I am going to have to report on the indictment. I have to get on the airwaves. I'm going to be on RT later reporting on Donald Trump's indictment. But I do want to mention a couple other things. I did want to mention this, which is that, we're at the point where we need to start viewing things. We need to start viewing things in terms of in the anti-war movement. You know what I mean? We need to start viewing things. We need to start viewing things less in terms of numbers and more in terms of quality. Because there are a lot of people that lurk around anti-imperialist politics, right? And thank you, Tuno. Oh, wait a second. Okay. There's a lot of people who kind of lurk around the anti-imperialist political community that are really not helpful. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. There's a lot of people that, claim they're anti-war. Maybe they like Jimmy Dore a little bit. Maybe they'll defend Russia here. They'll defend China there. But there was a test. There have been a series of tests over the past few months. And these people have failed them. And if they have failed them, we don't need them around. And it's not about numbers, right? Social media, if this was just a social media grift, it'd be about numbers. This is not a social media grift. This is about building a real organization. We're trying to build a real network of real anti-imperialists. We're trying to have real comrades who are in this for real, struggling against the imperialists. That's what we're doing here, right? We're trying to build a real working class organization, trying to build anti-imperialist solidarity, trying to build a real network of people that are struggling against World War III and the low-wage police state. And there's a lot of people who talk a good game about one issue or another on the internet. But there have been a couple moments where These people have revealed that they're worthless and we don't need them around. And I say that, I want to be inclusive of everybody. Right? I'm not sitting here saying, oh, we need to just cut ourselves off. I want us to make as many friends as possible. I really do. Right? But there's a difference. Tulsi Gabbard is not this kind of friend. Tulsi Gabbard is a political figure who we could strategically align with to stop World War III. But Tulsi Gabbard's never going to join CPI. Doesn't agree with us. She's not a Marxist. She's not, who knows? Maybe if we got to be really big and influential, she might come to our events once and give a nice message. But I doubt that it'd take a long time before that ever happened. But I'm not talking about figures within the power structure. I'm talking about people who call themselves communists or socialists or anti-imperialists on the internet, who have basically proved that having them around makes us weaker rather than making us stronger. And it's better to have lower numbers and not have these people around than it is to have bigger numbers and have them around and have to deal with their bullshit. And that sounds awful, right? That really sounds awful. I don't want to be that kind of guy, right? I don't want to be sectarian. I don't want to be like, well, you disagreed with me. Go. It's not about them disagreeing with me. It's about fundamental situations where these people have dropped the ball, and they have dropped the ball so epically that it's proved that it's better they're not around. And there have been two situations that happened in the past few months. And anybody who dropped the ball on these two situations, get them out of there, right? I'm serious. We don't need them, right? Anyone who claims that they agree, they're kind of around our circles. They watch these streams, but they don't get these two issues. These are two big issues. And if they, they're critical of NATO, or, they like Mao, or they like Stalin, or they like North Korea, or they whatever, right? They claim they're busting around our milieu. But if they got these two issues wrong, get them out of here. And people can change, right? And that's the other thing. People can change, and these people can change. And when they change, they'll get these two issues right. But these are two issues that are the litmus test, right? And if people don't get these two things, if they don't understand these issues, if they're not on the right side of these two issues, we don't need them around. I'm dead serious. And that sounds wildly sectarian and hostile. It's not, okay? It's just a matter of principle. You have to get this. If people cannot understand these two vitally important things, having them around is a liability. It puts us in danger. It actually puts us in danger to have people around if they don't understand these two fundamental points. If they don't get these two fundamental points, having them in our presence, having them breathing the same air as us, having them influence our conversations is goddamn dangerous. The two issues. The first issue, and I'm actually going to say this one first. I was going to make it second, but it's more important. This is the one issue that if people don't get this, if people cannot understand this, get them out. We don't want them around. Uhuru. The Uhuru indictment. Anybody who is not screaming from the heavens, drop the charges, hands off Uhuru, get them out of here. Anyone who's half-assing it and saying, okay, yeah, I guess they need to drop the charges. I interviewed one of these. I didn't interview him. Somebody, Liam, he went to May Day with me, and we took turns. Liam interviewed somebody from the Struggle La Lucha organization, right? And the guy was walking around the May Day protest with a Mumia sign. And Liam asked this guy, you can watch my May Day video, asked him, well, what about Uhuru? And he said, oh, yeah, that's important too. Yeah, that's important too. No, what do you mean that's important too? They want to make it a crime to speak up for Ukraine. They want to make it a felony and put you for 10 years in prison for disagreeing with sending weapons to Nazis in Ukraine. Anyone who does not understand how the Uhuru indictment is an emergency, right? And it's not enough to just say, oh yeah, I'm against it. No, anyone who is not screaming from the heavens about that case right now, right? If Tucker Carlson can understand how serious this is, Kim Iverson understands how serious this is, Glenn Beck understands how serious this is, Anybody who is not raising the alarm bell about Uhuru and saying, oh my God, they are making it, trying to make it a felony to be an anti-imperialist. Anyone who doesn't get that issue, right? Jimmy Dore talked about it. Great work, Jimmy Dore. Max Blumenthal gets it. I mean, anyone who does not understand how serious that case is, get them out of there. Anyone who quibbles, anyone who goes, blah, 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 get them out. I'm serious. It's dangerous to have them around because that means they don't understand what solidarity is. They don't understand how that case is a threat against all of us. Anyone who sits there and goes, Black Hammer, Ghazi, get them out of there. Just get them out of there. Anyone who does not understand how dangerous the indictments of 4 Black revolutionary activists, the indictment against them is, anyone who does not understand how goddamn dangerous that is, get them out of here. That is a sign you're dangerous. You are dangerous. That's what it is a sign of. Anyone who quibbles, anyone who's like, oh, yeah, I'm against that too. No, get them out. Just get them out. I'm serious because they don't understand how serious all of this is. The Uhuru case is a test. And there are a number of people in the anti-imperialist sphere who failed that test. And if you ask them, some of them will be like, yeah, I'm against jailing them, but cult, blah, 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 but Ghazi, blah, 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 but Black Hammer, blah, 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 but I know somebody who knows somebody who's mad at O'Malley, blah, 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 blah. Get them out. Just get them out. Just get them out, right? You can't have people like that around, right? You can't. You can't have people like that around because that is really dangerous. If they can't understand that an injury to one is an injury to all, if they do it to them, they come for them, they can come for you tomorrow. If they don't get that on a basic level, and they just have social media chronically online, just call it Black Hammer guys, get them out. Just get them out, right? Get them out. It's not a matter of agreeing with Uhuru on anything. It's not a matter of thinking that Uhuru, are just good people who are right on every issue. It's a matter of they're trying to throw him in prison because of their position on Ukraine. The indictment against them listed their position on Ukraine in some webinars and some Zoom calls. Okay. So it is a matter of urgency that we do everything we can to support Uhuru. And anyone who does not understand that, anyone who gives you some kind of song and dance about, well, I don't know, get them out. Just get them out. Right? Just get them out. Issue number 2, Rage Against the War Machine. Anybody who is against Rage Against the War Machine is not a serious person. Right? Anyone who's like, well, I don't know about Rage Against the War Machine. I know that, well, there was like Republicans there. I heard that somebody there once shook hands with somebody who was an oath keeper who shook hands with a Nazi, or anybody who's like that, get them out of there. Get them out of there. Get them out of there. All right? Anyone who saw a huge anti-war rally, the biggest anti-war protest in Washington, D.C. since the Iraq War days, that had Dennis Kucinich, Tulsi Gabbard, and Max Blumenthal, and Cynthia McKinney, and Tara Reid, and Garland Nixon, and just an amazing, important anti-war rally. Anyone who looked at that rally and said, I don't know, Caleb, I think that there was this one guy there who says bad words on his stream, or, I don't know, Caleb, there was somebody on that who went there, and like one time he said that, get him out, right? Get him out. The Rage Against the War Machine Coalition, all the people that were involved with that rally are good folks, right? Ideologically, they're not where we're at. Look, the Mises Caucus, my goodness, do you think I agree with Ludwig von Mises? Of course not. But you know what? The Mises Caucus people, they want to stop the war. They want to trade with Russia and China. They're against the Restrict Act. They want to free Assange. They want to free Uhuru. Fine. Right? The LaRouche people, obviously I've drifted closer to them over the past couple of years. There's still big disagreements there. They don't like Marx. They're not big fans of Mao or anything like that. But you know what? They get it. They understand that Russia and China are important. They understand that the lies against them are leading us toward a new world war. The LaRouche people want to build infrastructure. They're great, right? Who else, right? The Party of Communists, great folks. The Party of Communists, they're a hardline Marxist-Leninist communist party, a bit more orthodox in their perspective than I would be. But you know what? They're great folks because they understand this. Who else? The People's Party, Nick Brana. Right? Nick Brana, the People's Party that's running Cornel West for president, they get it. They get it. Good folks, right? And that the fact that all of those different people, the People's Party, the Party of Communists, the LaRouche Organization, the Center for Political Innovation, the Libertarian Party, Mises Caucus, the fact that they could all come together to have a really big anti-war rally in Washington, D.C., where members of Congress spoke, Chris Hedges spoke, with so many big name people spoke. That's a big deal. That's a really, really big deal. And anyone who looked at that and was like, anyone who looked at that and said, I don't know, they're racist. I heard they were Nazi. They're a trans. Anyone who looked at that, get them out of there. Right? Because we're in this for real. This is not an internet grift. This is not a social media, we're not trying to win the social media contest, okay? We're trying to actually stop World War III. The conditions are becoming intolerable and very, very, very serious. Yeah. Yep. And they're very, very serious conditions. And this is the time for folks to pull together. Right? This is a time for people to figure stuff out and come together. We need to build an alliance. We need to build an alliance to stop the war, to stop the all-out police state. So anyone who doesn't get Uhuru, anybody who doesn't get the importance of the Rage Against the War Machine Coalition is not worth our time. Now, people can change. I think that there could be people that they're teenagers, they're chronically online, but then they go and they join a real activist group and then they get it. Good, right? There could be people, that they heard one thing, but we befriend them, they change their position. People can change and people are allowed to change. And we should be willing to struggle with people. I liked that. The Maoist communists, they would talk about struggling with people for political line, right? That's really important. It's not internet debating. Right? It's like in person, you wrangle with somebody, you challenge someone's political views and you push them to develop a better political line. Right? There's something to be said for that. So I'm not saying every person who's not with us on those issues, just has to go into the garbage for life or we cancel them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not even saying we should call these people out on social media. I'm saying that we can't organize with them. And that we can't organize with them and we shouldn't bother trying to please them. If people can't get those two issues, if they just can't understand that the indictment against Uhuru is an emergency situation and that you're a little, it's a cult, I heard a cult, and none of that matters. They can't understand that. We don't have anything to say to them. We have to focus on organizing and building a cohesive network of people who do. Anyone who says, Rage Against the War Machine, I heard the LaRouche and the Nazi, get them out. Get them out, right? No one's saying you have to agree with everyone at Rage Against the War Machine. I certainly disagree very strongly with some of the people who spoke at Rage Against the War Machine and vice versa. But it was the most important thing. This is kind of becoming an emergency situation. Donald Trump was just indicted today. We're inching closer to World War III. The Restrict Act. Look at the details of what's happening, right, folks? The global situation is really intensifying. And if people can't get it, if people can't understand that this is real life, real people are going to go to jail, real people are going to die, this is becoming a really serious situation every day. If people can't understand that, we don't have time to pander to them, right? It's better, fewer, but better. Right? Better, fewer, but better. Because we're entering kind of a political emergency. I hate to be alarmist, but I try to be lighthearted and optimistic, but the stakes are getting pretty high, right? And I wrote a whole book, Where is America Going? and we're entering a long-term civilization crisis. Things are getting more and more serious. And I mean, I know all of you watching this, for the most part, I mean, there's probably one or two people watching this, you know, who are lurkers or whatever, who don't. But for the most part, everyone who watches this understands that. They understand Yahuru's an emergency. They understand the kind of coalition centered around Rage Against the War Machine, despite the flaws of individuals involved in it, is necessary, is the kind of thing we need. They get it. Right? They get it. Right? And I mean, there's some people like John McCarthy who've been doing so much, just working overtime for Yahoo. Noah has been doing really important work in solidarity with Yahoo. You know, I mean, there's some people that have just been doing everything they can to support Yahoo. There's been some people who've just been doing everything they can. I know we're about to have a video tonight, the video from our Rage Against the War Machine rally in New York City that we did in solidarity, where we joined the New York City Peace March. That video of that is going to go up later tonight. I'm really excited. I'm going to post that video later tonight. I just heard from the guy who edited it, Peter, that it's coming along. So that's really exciting. And for anyone who doesn't get that Rage Against the War Machine is the coalition, is the future, is that kind of coalition is the future. And anyone who doesn't get that Uhuru is an emergency situation, anyone who doesn't get that, you know, look, I mean, it's about, at the end of the day, right? And again, I will make this point. I have made this point on many, many live streams, and it took me a long time to really understand this point. It took me a long time to understand this. I kind of make this point in this book. Chapter 3, I talk about counter gangs. This is what it really gets down to, right? The situation we're in right now is a lot like the lead up to World War II. It's a lot like the lead up to World War II. It's a little more complex, and the USA is definitely in a different position, but it's kind of like the lead up to World War II, right? There was a big division in the ruling class in the lead up to World War II. In the lead up to World War II, in America and in Britain, there were two big factions in the ruling class. You had the oil bankers, and they wanted to align with the Soviet Union to defeat the Nazis. And you had the factory owners. They wanted to align with the Nazis to defeat the Soviet Union. Right? And that was just, there were two factions. Right? Now, the correct faction, the faction that it was correct for communists to align with, obviously, was the Roosevelt oil banker faction that wanted to defeat the Nazis. The Nazis were the main danger. They were attacking the Soviet Union. They wanted to destroy the labor movement. They committed the Holocaust. You know, obviously that was the main danger. But in the lead up to World War II, all across the Western capitalist world, you had the Roosevelt, Churchill faction, and you had the National Association of Manufacturers fascist faction. Okay? And all the political movements and ideologies divided. If you were a communist, you called yourself a communist, right? You said you believed in communism. You were in the labor movement. You believed in communism. If you were in the communist movement and you aligned with Roosevelt and Churchill and the Soviet Union against the Nazis, you joined the Communist Party. William Z. Foster, Gus Hall, Earl Browder, the Communist Party. However, if you called yourself a communist and you were on the other side and you were against Roosevelt and you were against the Soviet Union, and who did you do? You joined the Trotskyites. And that is why the Communist Party called the Trotskyites Nazi spies. They disrupted the war effort. They tried to unionize and disrupt the military during the war. They worked with the United Mine Workers Union to have a wartime strike that was illegal to disrupt war efforts. They worked with the Teamsters Union, that's a Republican union that was against Roosevelt. The Trotskyites, despite what they said they believed in communism. They were in essence serving the Nazis during the lead up to World War II. They were going around the world mobilizing against Stalin, mobilizing against Roosevelt. They were trying to disrupt the World War II effort. Trotsky was living in France at one point and was condemning the French Communist Party for trying to build up an anti-fascist resistance to the Nazi invaders. He was saying it should be turn your guns around. I mean, it was nuts. Trotsky, whether he knew it or not, was in essence serving fascism. And the communist movement was divided. And both sides said they believed in communism. And both sides were heavily involved in labor unions and strikes. But one side was serving the anti-Nazi side, that was the Communist Party, and the other side was serving the Nazi side, and that was the Trotskyites. It wasn't just them. The far right also divided. In Britain, there was a big Nazi, and his name was Oswald Mosley, and he was from one of the richest families in Britain, and he wore a black tunic, and he had this group called the Black Shirts, and they were like stormtroopers. They were the Nazis of Britain. Oswald Mosley and the Black Shirts. And they marched around and they used the Nazi salute, and they wanted Britain to align with the Nazis in World War II. They tried to pull off a military coup to install, there was a king. King Edward stepped down because he was known to have been his wife, was known to have been an asset of Nazi intelligence. Wallace Simpson was his wife, who was known to be a Nazi asset, and he was forced to step down, and that they wanted to pull off a coup, put King Edward back on the throne, and install Oswald Mosley as the military dictator. They had thousands and thousands of people that were in their Black Shirt organization. It was kind of a paramilitary organization for young men. They wore black uniforms. They liked Hitler. They hated Jews. They were anti-Semitic, etc., right? That was a big group in Britain, the British Union of Fascists, the BUF, or the Black Shirts, they were called. However, that was the far right wing. There was another far right wing movement in Britain that looked a lot like them. It looked almost exactly like them, right? They preached the exact same thing. Ultra patriotism, ultra religious conservatism. And, they marched in uniform, and the young men, moral purity, and they hated homosexuals, and they were to some degree a little bit anti-Semitic, and they were all kinds of things. But they supported Roosevelt. They supported Winston Churchill. They supported the Soviet Union. And they were called the Oxford Group, and later they were changed to the Moral Rearmament. So if you were a far right-wing person in Britain, right? Some of the far right wing were on the Nazi side, and some of the far right wing were on the side of the anti-fascists. And they espoused basically the same ideology. We need to get back to moral purity. We need to be loyal and patriotic to the nation. We need to live regimented, disciplined lives. But they were on one side or the other, right? New York City, the Black Liberation Movement in New York City, right? The Nation of Islam, right, led by Elijah Muhammad, they strongly felt that because the Japanese people are not white, they would never align with the white people against Japan. They also felt that, that they didn't trust Jewish people, and there was a feeling that Jews had persecuted Marcus Garvey, and there was some bad blood between Jews and black people in New York City. So the Nation of Islam, for whatever reason, they hated the Soviet Union. They didn't like Roosevelt. They didn't want to fight Japan. They took money from Japan. Japan was funding them. The Nation of Islam was on one side, and they had the right to do it, okay? And I maintain that just like the Irish people, during World War II, things were very confusing, and I support the right of any oppressed person to get support in their struggle for national liberation from anybody. I'm not condemning the Nation of Islam for that. I think it was a mistake. I think they were wrong. But I understand that colonized people have the right to seek alliances in different places. But the Nation of Islam, they were against Roosevelt. They were against the Soviet Union. They were sympathetic to Japan during World War II. They were one wing of the Black Liberation Movement. Then there was another wing of the Black Liberation Movement that supported Roosevelt, that hung out with the Communist Party, and that supported the Soviet Union. And that was led by Father Divine. And Father Divine, just like Elijah Muhammad, ultra-religious, fought for the liberation of black people, had a very dedicated core of people who gave the whole of their lives. But Father Divine, he was a black liberation activist, a religious, fanatic black liberation activist who supported Roosevelt, who hung out with the Communist Party, who supported Stalin and the Soviet Union. And again, if you listen to Elijah Muhammad and his message, and if you listen to Father Divine and his message, it sounded about the same. Right? That they were fighting for the liberation of black people, that racism was a problem. They needed to build a religiously dedicated, a religion-centered black liberation movement. Father Divine was on one side. Elijah Muhammad was on the other side, right? Just like in Britain. If you listen to Oswald Mosley and you listen to the Oxford Group and Pastor Frank Buckman, They sounded almost exactly the same. We need a strong Britain. We need military armament. We need, regimented life. We need men to be men and be ultra masculine again. We don't like Jews. It sounded like the same stuff. But Frank Buckman was on the anti-fascist side, and Oswald Mosley was on the fascist side. And if you listen to the Communist Party and you listen to the Trotskyites, it sounded about the same. We're fighting for the working class. We're against capitalism. We're against fascism. We're for the Bolsheviks. We're for workers' power. We have the true interpretation of Lenin's teachings. However, the Communist Party was on one side, and they were supporting Roosevelt. They were opposing the fascists. And the Trotskyites were on the other side. They were opposing the Soviet Union, trying to demonize Stalin and trying to work to tear apart the Roosevelt coalition and split the Roosevelt Popular Front Alliance and undermine the war effort. Different ideologies, different ideological justifications get divided when there's a real struggle going on between actual material forces. People of different ideologies espouse different things. The Libertarian Party of today, it's a similar thing. Some libertarians think China is the main threat. Communism is the main threat. They are really opposed to the Mises Caucus. They were really opposed to the Rage Against the War Machine rally. And then the Mises Caucus, they were for it. Right? And the same goes for Republicans. Many Republicans, like Tucker Carlson, like Glenn Beck, are supporting Uhuru, don't want to send weapons to Ukraine. And many other Republicans, they want to send more weapons to Ukraine. And the left is the same way. The main voices supporting leftism, Vosh, ContraPoints, DSA, PSL, CPUSA, they're on one side. However, the Center for Political Innovation and the Party of Communists USA were on another side. Ideology is secondary. It's about where you stand on the actual issues. There's a fight going on, right? If you're in a room, imagine that you were in a bar. You're in a bar having a few drinks with a few friends, and all of a sudden, a scuffle breaks out. And there's people on one side of the room punching, shoving against people on the other side of the room. If you're in a room where there's a fight going on, you're not going to ask what ideology people are on as you're trying to navigate the situation. You're going to ask, what side are they on in the fight? There's a real fight going on right now. And the question is, what side are you on in the fight? Not what ideology do you espouse? What do you think the meaning of life is? What do you think right and wrong is defined as? What political system do you think is ideal? What economic theories do you buy into? What side are you on? Do you want to jail Uhuru for being a cult or being, Nazbol or whatever? Or do you want to free the Uhuru movement? Answer the question. Do you want to stop World War III and align with whoever we can align with to stop World War III? Or do you want to play a stupid cancel culture game? Oh my God, they're racist, and we got to stop. And are you more concerned with stopping Donald Trump than stopping World War III? That's the question. That's what matters. And you got to get through your mind. And that there's a lot of dead weight among anti-imperialists right now. And we just got to cut it out, right? I mean, if somebody is more concerned about proving to the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party that they understand economics more and that libertarianism is wrong, then uniting with them to stop the war, to free the Uhuru movement, we don't need them around. I mean, it's a lot like the U.S. Civil War. Karl Marx was on Lincoln's side. Was Lincoln a communist? No. Was Lincoln a racist? Yes. Was Lincoln right in the Civil War? Yes. Was the South wrong in the Civil War? Yes. It's that simple, right? We can recognize that there are people on our side of all kinds, but the question in America in 1860 was, are you on the Southern Confederate pro-slavery British Empire side, or are you on the side of Abraham Lincoln and Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass? Are you on their side? That was the question. It wasn't what ideology you believe in. Many of the people who were fighting, I went to a museum. They have a museum here in New York City. about the history of New York City. Many of the letters, they have letters that Union soldiers from New York City wrote home to their relatives about the Civil War. They said all kinds of racist shit. They said, I can't believe we're doing this, and just, I mean, to have these letters there. And I think the people who put this display on in the New York City History Museum are making a point. There were many New York City folks who got drafted to fight in the Civil War who did not support black people and were very racist. But they were still on the right side of the Civil War, whether they wanted to be or not. Right. And I mean, I remember I sat in the museum reading these letters. They had them on display of these guys basically saying, I hate black people, but I love America. And so I'm going to go fight. And they were on the right side for bad reasons. Did it matter? I mean, it mattered on some level, sure, but they were still on the right side. Right. Meanwhile, there were people on the Southern side who said they were against slavery. They said, but slavery will just eventually end on its own. But I believe in states' rights. And this is my home. I'm from Virginia. It's my home. I have to fight for Virginia. Well, it doesn't matter. You could be a good person. You could say you're against slavery. You could say you're against racism. But at the end of the day, you're on the side of the South. That's what history is like. When you're in a real historical moment. Let me emphasize this. When you're in a real historical moment, abstract ideas, ideologies, and theories don't matter as much as where you stand in the actual struggle. And what I'm telling you is there are a lot of people who talk a good game that are on the wrong side. And there are a lot of people who talk a bad game who are on the right side. And that's the way history works. That's the way history works. And that if people can't understand that this is real life, and that's what this is real life. If people can't understand that this is real life, sorry, I have to respond to a message there. If people can't understand that this is real life and that this isn't an internet argument about the history of the 20th century and whether Stalin was based or not, people can't understand that. And this is about a real struggle against a real war and a real emerging low-wage police state. We can't have them in our movement. And honestly, I will self-criticize right now. Right? I will self-criticize right now. I will self-criticize right now and admit that one of my mistakes is that there were people who didn't understand this. There were people who just couldn't wrap their minds around this. And my mistake was I didn't cut them off soon enough. I thought we could just work with these people and make them better. I thought, let's give them another chance. Let's try to persuade them. Let's bond them to the group some more. It was a mistake. There were some alarm bells that went off, right? When the Black Hammer House got raided, and all I said was, let's not celebrate this. That's all I said, right? And I'm not sure where I stand on Black Hammer, to be honest, but I'm against the indictment. I'm against the indictment of 4 black revolutionary activists. You know what I mean? But when the Black Hammer raid happened, and all I said was, let's not celebrate this, and certain people lost their minds because they're chronically online and they're losers, that should have been an alarm bell. Right? When certain people, just continued reaching out to whoever was talking smack against CPI, talking smack against LaRouche, you know what I mean? They just sat there, and it was like they were just bending over backwards to try and make friends with the people who thought Rage Against the War Machine was Nazi, because God forbid there's Republicans there, right? I should have just said, get out. That's what I should have done. But I thought, if I'm nice to these people, if I bond them to the group some more, they make some real friendships. Doesn't work that way, right? Now, people can change, and people can grow up, and people can suddenly, reality could just smack them in the face, and they have to face it. So I'm not saying people will never change, but if people can't get those two issues, those are two solid points of unity. And if people can't understand that, they need to get out until they can. Right. And I'll be honest, I made the mistake of kind of trying to accommodate people's backwardness. So, I'm learning from that, right? But there you go. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. And now I'm going to do names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. I'm going to start answering super chat questions. The answers might be quicker tonight because of the fact that I have to go on the air shortly. I have to go on the air at the top of next hour. So my answers might be quicker, but we got Mark in Utica, New York. Welcome, Mark from Utica, New York. Rupert Fellows from England. Mr. Wonderful from Qantas, right? Zach Brunch from Richmond, Virginia. Melbourne is stuck in traffic. David Fox, good friend of our show. Jonathan Mari in Sweden. West Virginia, Sam Price. Ontario, Canada. Randall from Lexington, Kentucky. Temple City, California. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Tony in Tasmania. Jamie in St. Paul. Moonlight Beach, California. Sam from Missouri. Keith Preston from Richmond, Virginia. John McCarthy in Chicago. Bob Troy in New York. John Vance in Canada. Auckland, New Zealand. Catalonia, Spain. Colin in Greensboro. Cape May. And Lisa from Pennsylvania. Shout out to you. Google user Remy in Gary, Indiana. Welcome, everybody. Farina is delicious. All right. Chris in Salt Lake City is with us. Micah in Las Vegas. A1 and A2 in Palo Alto, California. We got Cape May, Tulsa, Rice from Adelaide, Australia, Auckland, New Zealand. Good times. The Acorn in Tulsa. Welcome. The Acorn in Tulsa. Welcome. Killian in Milwaukee, Che Guevara in New Mexico. Welcome. I think I saw Mariah in North Carolina go by. All right, folks. I'm going to start answering super chat questions. So real quick, before that, I do want to mention that we are having a CPI training weekend, a weekend workshop, a weekend training school that is happening here. I think I'll put the logo on the screen for it. Why not, right? If I can find it here. Yeah, I'll put the logo. A very beautiful logo was made for it. Let me just put that logo on the screen, right? Okay. All right. We're having a beautiful logo that was made for the... All right. Yeah, we're having Roadmap for America, an introduction to the city building tendency. That is the workshop that we're doing in Missouri, and we are doing this June 23rd through the 25th, and that is in Missouri. It'll be near St. Louis, Missouri. We'd love to have you there, but in order to attend, you need to be either a member or a close friend of the Center for Political Innovation. So join the organization so you can attend our workshop. Now is the time to become a full member of the CPI so that you can come to our great workshop that we are having. We'd love to have you there. Should be a great weekend in Missouri. You'll get to learn. You'll get to bond with people. So, sign up, become a member of the CPI so that you can attend our great workshop. No, it will not be live streamed. Phil, won't be live streamed. This is a real IRL event. We're building an IRL organization. Might be some video afterwards. We're still working that out, but it's mainly for people that want to build an IRL organization to do IRL work to stop an IRL war and an IRL low-wage police state. So, join the organization so that you can attend, and we would love to have you. Love to have you there. It's going to be a great workshop. There's going to be an event in New York City. That'll be in early July, still nailing down the details for that event, but the announcement will come shortly. So good times, folks, good times. So now I'm going to start answering people's super chat questions. First one is something about Jackson Hinkle at UCLA. I don't care what Jackson Hinkle does. I'm not interested in talking about that. And, please don't bait me. Please don't, right? I know he said reprehensible things about me, and that's disappointing, but I don't want to get into a tit for tat, and I don't care what he says, and I don't want to talk about him. So please just don't mention him on these streams. I'm just not interested, and I don't want to get into a tit for tat. I don't want to get into too many people are interested in this. Oh my God, did you hear what so-and-so said? Oh, what are you going to say about that? I'm not interested. I really am not. Jackson, I've met him before. We didn't click as a person, and he's gone out of his way to say a lot of nasty things about me, which is disappointing, right? But I'm not here to make Jackson happy. He probably doesn't give a flying F what I have to say. So don't ask me about Jackson. You know what I mean? He spoke at Rage Against the War Machine. Does that matter to me? No. Do I still support Rage Against the War Machine? Yes. Right. I'm not here. It's not about personalities. So, Jackson says a lot of good stuff, but I really just don't want to, I don't care to talk about him. Please don't ask me about Jackson Hinkle. I'm just not interested. I'm not interested. So there we go. The Department of Justice tried to get Uhuru to take a plea deal, and they are a lot braver than Donald Trump is. Yeah, but I'm with you, John. Honestly, though, if Donald Trump takes the plea, I mean, or he backs out of running, I mean, I feel like he would just totally disappoint so many of his supporters. I feel like Donald Trump wouldn't do that. It would just be suicide for him. I honestly feel like they're going to sit down with Trump, and it's going to be, you're going to be indicted and you can go to jail, or you can go into exile. Or I just feel like Donald Trump, they're doing everything they can to prevent him from running. That's pretty clear. But I feel like Donald Trump, for him to drop out of the race, I don't feel like he's going to drop out of the race, right? They're going to have to really turn the screws on him. And honestly, I don't think it'll work. I think that Trump's popular support is too high, and that they're helping him right now. They're helping him. I think that to some degree or other, the Democrats want to kind of corner the Republican Party into nominating him, and then range it so he can't win. That's why the Democrats are trying to escalate the legal attacks on him and all that. They want to kind of force the Republican Party to have him be their nominee, and then force him into a situation where he has to drop out of the race, or he has to flee the country, or something like that. It looks like right now they're trying to give him publicity. They're trying to give him attention, but they also have something up their sleeve to make sure he's not going to become the president. And honestly, I think for Donald Trump to get reelected, it's going to be really, really difficult, because Trump has gotten way better since leaving office. That quantum leap speech was amazing. And also many of the people that were originally with him, the kind of people that were like Mike Pence, people like that, have drifted away from him. And that Donald Trump's politics, he's way more isolated. Many people in the mainstream of the American government are just solidly against him at this point. And that, the state, there used to be a faction of the state that was with him. I don't see a big faction of the state that's with him at this point. So there you go. And you talk about what's happening in South Africa. Well, what's the latest, right? I know about, they were accused of supposedly helping Ukraine. That was going on, and the economic freedom fighters. What's the latest in South Africa? What's the latest in South Africa? Right. It's losing money over Russia's stance, right? It's joining the BRICS. Are you referring to a specific thing? So there you go. I don't know specifically what you're referring to. The connection between Trotsky and the neocons. That's the next super chat question I've got here. The connection between Leon Trotsky and the neocons is that, so this is what happened, right? Leon Trotsky, he broke with the Communist Party, broke with the Soviet Union, went into exile. He was building his own wing of global communism that was against the Soviet Union. It attracted a lot of intellectuals, some renegade labor leaders, but mainly intellectuals, mainly academics, people like that. And in New York City, Trotskyism became fashionable for people who thought they were kind of too smart for the Communist Party. Right? And the Communist Party, to be fair, had some flaws. I mean, the Communist Party was a very rigid kind of organization where you weren't allowed to ask questions, and that they developed a kind of authoritarian internal life, a kind of Sorelianism where they were focused on getting the job done, and they didn't like people asking too many questions and stuff. There were problems in the Communist Party, the way they were set up. But a lot of the people, the Trotskyites basically became the wing of New York City politics that attracted, kind of intellectuals that, that didn't fit in with the Communist Party, right? They didn't fit in with the Communist Party. They didn't like the Communist Party's atmosphere. And I've got the book somewhere. I'm a little too close up against the wall here. So 1939, here we go. 1939, the Soviet Union, because the Western countries wouldn't sign a pact with them, 1939, the Soviet Union, signed the non-aggression pact with Hitler. And the New York intellectuals, who were the leaders of Trotskyism, in New York City, they broke with Trotsky, right? Trotsky supported the Soviet Union's right to do so, right? Even though he was against the Soviet leadership. The leaders of the New York City Socialist Workers' Party, the Trotskyites, they were against Trotsky. And then they came to the conclusion. Here's another very good book on this very subject. It has a biography of a lot of these key people in it. Here we go. This is The New York Intellectuals by Alan Wald. And that's who they were. They were called the New York Intellectuals, the anti-Stalinist left, the rise and decline of the anti-Stalinist left from the 1930s to the 1980s. The New York Intellectuals, here's a good book on them. They were these New York City academics. The big three leaders were Max Shachtman, Martin Aburn, and James Burnham. There were three different big-name Trotskyites who said that because the Stalin-Hitler Pact had been signed, that the Soviet Union was no longer, there was nothing revolutionary about it anymore. It was no longer a workers' state. It was no longer, it was either state capitalism, or it was bureaucratic collectivism, or it was not socialism. The Soviet Union did not have a socialist economic foundation, and they shouldn't defend the USSR, right? They shouldn't support the USSR. And Trotsky had a big falling out with those folks. They all got kicked out of Trotskyism outright. And they started their own organization. First, it was called the Workers' Party. Then it became the Independent Socialist Party, or the Independent Socialist League. And they were the followers of Max Shachtman. And those folks, those intellectuals who became followers of Max Shachtman, they became the people that got hired by the CIA to run the Congress for Cultural Freedom program. Irving Kristol was one of these people. And Irving Kristol, he fought in the Second World War. He was a Trotskyite, and he said he hated the people that he fought in the Second World War with. He hated the working class, right? And he really hated them. It's really, you read this New York Times obituary, it's just really blatant how much he hated working class people, right? After the Second World War, these people were hired by the CIA in their Congress for Cultural Freedom program. Irving Kristol, it was one of the Shachtmanite Trotskyites. He became the main CIA hired intellectual to run the Congress for Cultural Freedom program. Hannah Arendt comes out of these circles. Mary McCarthy comes out of these circles. These people were just well-known New York City intellectuals, leftists, academics, but they hated the Soviet Union. And they were leftists in the sense that they talked about socialism, and they didn't like the military, and they didn't like conformity. They considered themselves to be free thinkers. They were anti-totalitarian. Hannah Arendt wrote books against totalitarianism. But it started out with equating Nazi Germany with the Soviet Union. That was a really big part of what they believed. And they were a group of Trotskyites who came to the conclusion that Trotsky was wrong. The Soviet Union was not a deformed workers' state. It was the equivalent of Nazi Germany somehow. It was like a fascist country. And that led them to start writing CIA propaganda after World War II. And then they at first liked the New Left. These people invented the New Left. But by the late 60s, when the New Left was waving the Vietnamese flag and supporting the Palestinians against Israel and chanting ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, and, they turned against the New Left because they thought the New Left was anti-imperialist. It was too anti-imperialist. They didn't like the Black Panthers. They didn't like the New Left. So they then became neocons, right? Irving Kristol, Irving Howe. Irving Howe ended up founding DSA, so I guess he didn't become a neocon. But Irving Kristol, and then there was a professor at the University of Chicago. He was at New School University for a while, and then he was at the University of Chicago. And his name was Leo Strauss, and he was a mentor to a lot of these people. He had fled Nazi Germany. He was a philosophy professor. He wrote Persecution and the Art of Writing, and he argued, his theory was that there are intellectuals, that there's a group of people that are like the philosopher kings that Plato wrote about. They're just smarter than everybody else, and that the undermentioned, the average people, persecute them. He really drew heavily from Nietzsche. And Leo Strauss had this concept of totalitarianism was populism. It was the great intellectuals being persecuted by the mob. It was, anti-populism. So you have Leo Strauss and Irving Kristol. Irving Kristol is the ex-Trotskyite, who is hired by the CIA to be their big intellectual to start, doing their leftist stuff, their Congress for Cultural Freedom. And he becomes a conservative eventually because he just thinks the New Left is too anti-imperialist. And then you have Leo Strauss, who has this elitism, which kind of crafts and creates the New Left, but then also kind of crafts the neocons. So, yeah, Sidney Hook is also, Sidney Hook is from this milieu. He was, a little bit ahead of the game, but he was with the CIA and all of that. So, yeah, that's the connection, right? Their lineage goes back to the 1939 split in the SWP. Trotsky's book on them is called In Defense of Marxism. The book by Max Schacht, or the book by James Cannon, is called The Struggle for a Proletarian Party. And then the book on these individuals, kind of biography of them all, is called The New York Intellectuals. But yeah, that's their lineage. That's how they get back to Trotskyism. Anti-populism. Someone says the live views are way down. Are they? I don't know. I don't think they're way down. It just depends. I'm doing a lot with shorts right now. I'm showing short clips, and those short clips are getting a lot of views, right? But then I think people don't get notifications. They get notified of the shorts or whatever. But again, we're not trying to win an internet popularity contest, right? We're not, right? Look, there's about 1,000 people, 1,000 to 2,000 people who watch all of these streams. That hasn't really changed. Sometimes it's closer to 1,000. Sometimes it's closer to 2,000. But I look at the unique views on YouTube, it's about the same, right? There's usually about 200 likes on all these streams. Likes is a little bit more accurate because there's actually one person hitting the like button. So hitting the like button is very important. But at the end of the day, YouTube has never released what a view is. Did you know this? YouTube will not reveal what a view actually means, what constitutes a view. So we don't even really know, right? We really don't know. Now, these streams, they go up on other platforms. I won't name them on here because I think YouTube might suppress me if I do, but they go up on many different places. And, look, again, better, fewer, but better. This isn't a contest. You know what I mean? We're in this to build a real organization. We're racing against time, and we're heading towards strategic equilibrium. And, it's weird. That's one of the signs that you might be a fringe organization. You might be isolated, but sometimes the concepts we develop, we have to give them names that are unique to us. We talk about synthetic left, we talk about city building tendency and stuff. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to develop your own little bit of lingo, right? It's kind of off-putting and, but strategic equilibrium, that has a specific meaning in like Maoist guerrilla warfare, but for us, it has a different meaning. Strategic equilibrium is this. Right now, people don't have to join groups. People join groups like CPI or the People's Party or the Libertarian Party or the MAGA movement because they're interested in politics, right? In countries that are facing a genuine revolutionary situation or genuine conditions that could lead to one, people join groups out of necessity. conditions have become so bad, people need an organization that will provide them with services, will protect them, right? Around the world, people didn't join Mao and his revolutionary army in China because they just read about communism and it seemed interesting. They joined it because they were desperately poor and struggling, right? People in the 1930s didn't join the Communist Party because they read about communism. It seemed interesting. They joined it because they were starving and the communists were building unemployment councils and the Soviet Union was raising people up out of poverty. And, we are going to, in the next 4 or 5 years, probably, maybe sooner than that, hit strategic equilibrium in the United States, which means people will start joining organizations because they have to in order to survive. We're not there right now. We are not there right now. We're not there. And, when we get there, that's going to be a huge game changer. We need to build the organizational apparatus so that when that happens, we have a network of people who can change the way we operate in order to meet the needs of the moment. Right now, people are joining us because they like what I have to say. They like the books we publish. We need to flip that. We need to create a situation where people join us as a mechanism of survival. People join us. And when that time comes, we're not in those conditions yet. When we hit those conditions, when the crisis gets to be intense enough that people would join a group like CPI or the People's Party or the Libertarian Party or whatever, because they need to survive out of real desperate need, the way we organize is going to drastically change. So we need to be preparing for strategic equilibrium, right? And that's not what strategic equilibrium means in the classic Maoist sense. It's a new meaning that we have developed. There's going to be, and it might happen more gradually than we expect, but I feel like the crisis will intensify to the point that people will join revolutionary organizations out of necessity rather than out of what do you call it? Out of interest, out of intrigue. And we need to be prepared for that to happen. Right. And that right now it's a lot of social media stuff and, we're not going to win the game. Right. But we need to understand that we will hit strategic equilibrium soon. And when we hit strategic equilibrium, the way we organize will change, right? And that we need to be prepared for that. So keep that in mind. We are building a network of people. We're building a ship before the storm, right? This is Noah's Ark. We're building the ark, but the storm hasn't come yet. We got to build the ark before the storm comes. That's what we're doing. We're trying our best to build the goddamn ark before the storm comes. And some people don't understand that storm is really going to come. But some people don't understand that floodwaters really happen. And that if we don't have the ark built, they're going to drown. People don't understand that. People want to sit there and talk about, well, Yahoo, blah, 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 blah. People want to talk about, I don't want to march with conservatives, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, when the storm comes, when the floodwaters are raining outside, when the floodwaters are rising, you're going to want to be on the ark. But some people don't get that. Some people don't understand this is real. Some people in their mind, World War III, what's that, right? Oh, economic conditions deteriorating. What's that, right? I'm telling you, shit is moving gradually toward getting very intense. And when shit gets intense, you need comrades. You need an ark. When the flood comes, you need a goddamn ark, right? You need an ark when the flood comes. And we got to build this ark now. The flood will be strategic equilibrium. And when we hit strategic equilibrium, everything will change. So there you go. Did I get a chance to listen to the Twitter space with Tulsi and RFK? No, I did not. Can you provide a link, John? Can you provide a link for that? Because I don't know how to find a Twitter space. If there's a recording of it somewhere or something, I'd love to hear it. But I have no way of finding it. So if you can provide a link to that Twitter space, it's been referenced in a number of conversations I've had with people. John, you are not the only person who's mentioned it to me. Sounds like a really important thing. I'm very interested in Tulsi Gabbard. And so there you go. And John said, that's the only way I'll ever vote for Trump is if Tulsi was his running mate. I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Tulsi Gabbard. I bet the Dems won't impeach him anymore if he does that. Yeah, to have Tulsi be president, that would be a great fear on their part. What good sources do you have on Stalin invaded Poland claims? Well, there's a very good section in the book, Blood Lies by Grover Furr on that. But you know what the main source of proof that Stalin didn't invade Poland is? The Polish government never declared war on the Soviet Union. Right? The Polish government, the Nazis invaded Poland. The Polish government went into exile in Britain, and it never declared war on the Soviet Union. Not once. Not once. So if, the Polish government exile immediately declared war on the Nazis, but it never declared war on the Soviet Union. So if it was a joint invasion, if Stalin and Hitler teamed up to invade Poland, why did the Polish government never declare war on the Soviet Union? Not once. All that happened was the Polish government collapsed. The Nazis invaded, the Polish government collapsed, and then in response to that, the Soviet Union brought its troops right up to the line because there'd been this line drawn down Europe because of the pact, and the understanding between the Soviet Union and the Nazis was, we will keep our army on this side if you keep your army on this side. So Hitler violated an agreement, invaded Poland. He broke the treaty he'd made with the British and the French and all the others, and he invaded Poland. And so the Soviet Union said, oh shit, Hitler's army's on the march, and they moved their army right up to that line. That's all that happened. And the Polish government never declared war on the Soviet Union. Google it. At no point did the Polish government ever declare war on the Soviet Union. So that is all the proof you need. If it had been an invasion, if Poland had been invaded by the evil Reds and the commies, they would have declared war on them. But they didn't. All right. Aaron Mate just tweeted a clip of Rachel Maddow saying that the Department of Justice might drop charges if Trump agrees not to run. Shocker, right? And that shows that this is political. That shows it's blatantly political. Weaponization of the judiciary, right? Biden should be impeached. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. He's using the Department of Justice to go after his political rivals. It's reprehensible. And did the Haitian Revolution partly inspire Marx? The Haitian Revolution was an uprising of slaves in Haiti, which was a French colony. And that C.L.R. James, and he wrote his book Black Jacobins, arguing that the Haitians were basically inspired and more truthfully and honestly carried out the ideals of the French Revolution. The ideology they were espousing, I'm sorry, something caught my attention. The ideology they were espousing was more consistent with the ideals of the French Revolution, that they took to heart those principles, and that they were inspired by the wave of democratic, popular uprisings, etc. So there we go. I have to get off of here soon. I am familiar with Andrei Vicek. I was very saddened to learn about his death. It was heartbreaking. He died, and he wrote a lot of anti-imperialist writing. From a somewhat Marxist perspective, and quite an interesting individual. But I must put on the closing music because I have to go work now. I have to get on the air for RT to talk about Donald Trump's indictment. So watch me on RT, and I'll be back tomorrow night. I'm doing these streams as much as I can. We'll be back soon, you see. You'll remember you belong to me. You'll be back. Anyway, I'm singing Hamilton. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.